Hello, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb.
And I'm Manswell Peterson.
And we welcome you to the Author's Den. This is the place where authors come to share their writing journey and encourage others.
And we have some fun along the way, too.
That's right. Glad you're here. Sit back and enjoy this episode of the Author's Den. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Author's Den. I'm Cyrus Webb. Here in just a moment, I'll be joined by my co-host, best-selling author Manswell Peterson, and we have a very special guest that's joining us today. She's the author of a lot of books, both fiction and nonfiction. I'm talking about the one and only Dr. Velma Bagby. I'm excited to be able to have her on with us today to talk about her writing journey. ESP Presents, hello to you. Good to be able to see you. Glad you could be with us. There's Dr. Velma. I'm going to go ahead and bring her in, as well as Manswell. Any questions, of course, for Dr. Velma? Make sure you guys put those in the chat section there.
Hey,
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Doing really good. Dr. Velma, hello. How are you?
Hello, everybody.
Great
Good evening to you, too.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Literary Ambassador, good to be able to see you as well. I think it's pronounced Lashana. Hello to you, Lashana. Good to be able to see you. Amy Rainer's over here. Amy, guys, she's one of my oldest friends. We've known each other since high school. So good to be able to see Amy. Dr. Teresa, good to be able to see you. Dr. Taj, Dr. Pretty, hello to you. Good to see you as well. All our good people coming in. So excited for you guys to be with us here for the live show. Again, this is the Author's Den, where we're able to talk with authors about their writing journey with my co-host, Manswell Peterson. It's always a great time. I'm excited about this. Dr. Velma, we're so excited to have you on with us. I'm going to get things kicked off by throwing it over to my co-host, Manswell.
Yes. Let's get down to what we do at the Author's Den.
Oh, my goodness. What have you got me into, Cyrus?
Head bounce with this thing right here.
Wait, should I put my glasses up so I can make sure I can see?
Put the glasses up, put them down. It don't matter. Just swing it all around, baby. We're going to get
Okay.
All right. All right. Let me tell you right now. You had me and my wife debating something with the cats.
Oh, really?
And we were sitting there talking about this, and I'm like, See, and it's so weird. I want to get into your vibe of your characters because we always have a lot of discussions at my house because, we always discuss books. And so when we were reading this, we were like, okay, because, she got them single friends. Mm-hmm. And we always had a discussion about single women giving married women advice and, married women hang with single women. And then it's like, you got the catch and you got Veronica here. That date blew me away. I'm sorry. That first part, it opened up a whole 6-pack of worms, not a can of worms, a 6-pack.
Yeah.
What was going through your head when you created that scene? That's the biggest question I got right now. I need to know that question in your head.
You know what? You're not the first person that had that kind of reaction. One of the readers said, wow, Dr. Velma, out of the gate in the very first chapter, what created that was my interview with some of the men I wanted to investigate and get their opinion about what were some of the challenges they face. And we're not talking about outside the church. We're talking about within.
Yes.
And these were the conversations. And this was what they shared with me. Those surveys were their responses.
Okay.
So I didn't make the surveys up. Because
when I tell you, and I love the opening so much because, for me as an author, and, talking to you as an author about your creativity, I wanted something different. And that was our next reader. So we got this. And boy, I'm going to tell you how bad it was. When my wife put the book down and pulled her glasses down and looked at me, I was like, yeah, I'm coming. I'm coming. Yeah, you see it. Because when she said the potential fifth husband, I was like, oh. Now, something's wrong with that when nobody wants you like that. So, when you go into the guy's head, I know you had to survey, but your characters were so, if you read this, your characters, it's like slapping you in the face with reality. Because that's really what dating is. And I'm glad I don't have to date no more, but I said friends who are dating.
One of the things I've talked about in the past with Cyrus about that particular case is I've heard it. I've heard it all. Over 30 years with my husband by my side as the pastor, we're doing pre-marriage counseling, all of that stuff. I've heard it for years.
Right.
Women have that same perspective and tend to blame men all the time. And I'm sitting there knowing the truth. No, that's not always the case. You need to check your own heart, not his. But have you examined what your issues are? Because you're attracting what your heart is saying you want. And
Bingo.
so that's the problem. And so always blaming them. And then I discovered there was this syndrome that professional women have. And they say, he's jealous and he's intimidated by my success. No, that's not the case. Some of the cases, the professional women, they are successful because they know how to take a thing and turn it around and make it successful.
Yes.
And then try to apply those same techniques in a relationship, and it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And so again, wearing that, I had to have that boss mentality too, as a deputy administrator, overseeing 10 offices and 100 people. I had to have that boss mentality, but when I walked into the door of my home, that boss mentality I left back at the job. I was just Pastor Bruce's wife. I was here trying to get my dinners going and all of that. And so we just confuse and mix those experiences and those roles when we have to learn how to set them aside sometimes so that we can do what we've been called to do.
Because I'm going to tell you, I'm pumped for this one. Oh, I'm pumped for this interview. I've been waiting for this interview. Oh, I've been waiting.
Gosh.
Let me tell you.
Wait. First of all, Cyrus, I'm going to get you.
Me?
You done released that
I'm just a co-host.
I want your mama's number after this.
That's Velma. Dr. Velma, look, let me break it down for you. We're both co-hosts, right?
Okay,
I'm the producer. He's the executive producer, right? Executive producer's over the producer, right?
I know who's in charge.
Sorry, meet bus.
Hey, I'm like everybody else, Dr. Velma. I'm just here for the comments. I'm just reading.
Okay. Let me break this down right here, Dr. V, because I'm telling you now, Dr. Velma, let me tell you, because we had some single friends, and I gave some advice because they were like, how can I get a good man? Because you do this for your wife. And I'm like, stop looking at what I do for my wife and look at what you want in a man. But before you look at what you want in a man, I told them to write it down, write a list. Okay, you want him to make 6 figures. Okay, you want him to have his own house. Okay, you want to have 800 credit score. Okay, and I said, be that list. That list is going to attract guys quickly to that. And so I always tell them, be the list. Write your list down and then be the list. And you know what? Do you know how much? Ooh, girl, I got pushed back.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, you can't come in and say I want A, B, C, D, E, but you only want to give it A and C. So when I was reading your book, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, because my wife was like, and she knew I was gonna hit her. She knew I was gonna hit her hard on this one because I'm like, see, these are the same things that your friends that you talking about that are single that I bought 4 extra. I'm buying 4 extra copies, and I swear I'm like, hey, you need to read this. You need to read this because see, that's how sometimes you have to get the message across. Because when you hit, I mean, did you even think about just the being civil? Because you came out swinging.
No, it's the way it had to be that way. Because remember, this was in response to my male readers. So this was their gift. This was my gift to them. In response to what they asked me. They asked for this book. I've been writing to the women for a reason because I see the other side. I know the other side. I know the mistakes. I know the wrong mentality that they have sometimes. And to be honest with you, I recognize there's some people that's not my audience, and that's okay. It's to those who really want to know the truth, and you know what the truth does to you.
Oh, it sets you free. Oh, it sets you free.
You have to want to be free.
Yes.
Some people don't want sound wisdom, sound doctrine, sound instruction. Some people reject instruction, and we know that's a list on the fool list. We talked about that. I'm working on a game right now. It's called the food cards, a card of fools, a deck of fools is what it's called. It's because people need to really recognize if you're being the fool based on God's definition, or you're dating a fool, you definitely don't want to marry one. So it's important for you to understand what that looks like and what that sounds like. And so a lot of people don't realize that they're sounding like what God calls foolish.
Right. That's true. So let me ask you this question, because now that I'm off that part, because boy, you came out swinging with a baseball bat with that one. When you write, I normally ask authors, and I really want to know, your creative side. Do you plot or do you free write? Because that's a serious question that I always ask other authors. Do you plot your story out, or do you just have your characters and you just go free writing? Which one do you prefer, or which one do you do?
Let me tell you, Let me tell you what I discovered. It took me 6 years to write my very first book, and the reason it did is because I was used to carrying the state's voice. Because I wrote for state government, so I knew the voice, I knew the language, I knew how to structure the sentences and all. But to step away and then discover my own voice, and this is something people need to take time to figure out, to discover my own voice and what is it I want to say and how do I want to say it, and then understanding the world of writing books, all of that. I knew that I had to take an approach that was specific to what I had to do. And in terms of the 6 years that it took me to write that first one, it was because I was listening to other people who said, this is what you should do. Develop an outline. And let me tell you something, I hate outlines unless I'm writing a grocery list. I did some research on the different styles of writing, and I discovered my style because I thought, well, why is it I'm not like this? I don't want to do Post-it notes. I didn't like the snowflake method after ordering the book. I didn't like that. Don't like the outline. And then lo and behold, I discovered the jigsaw.
Oh, yes.
And that method is exactly how I write. Today I'm working on a character, and tomorrow it may be a totally different scene. And the next day I'm working on a totally different piece because I'm inspired in that moment. That's what I'm going to write about. All of that happens that way until I have all these pieces together. Then I put them together, and then I know how they're going to fit in the book. But I don't know in the beginning, because in this moment I'm writing based on what I feel like my creativity wants to do in this moment. And so it's the jigsaw puzzle. The same way we put together a puzzle, there's pieces on the table, and then you start putting, that's the exact way that I write.
Yes, and that's the best way. And I tell people, everybody can't fit that model. I can do 12 to 15 books a year with that model. And I tell people that's because I dedicate my whole time to writing. But a lot of people can't fit that because they don't understand jigsaw puzzles because they never done one. And so literally, they have to follow outline, and you see that outline will slow you down. And I'm glad that you actually found the jigsaw puzzle, because the jigsaw side really is so much better. You're gonna pick up a lot of male readers with this, and I'm gonna say this post. I'm gonna put it out there for everybody. PSA: protect this woman at all costs. Protect this woman at all costs.
Well, I did it because I have some very dear male people in my life, not only my husband, but I have some nephews who also contributed to that survey. Look, Auntie, you need to talk about this, from a generation, from that millennial generation, that's where the microwave title came from, the microwave woman. I said, what? Explain the microwave woman. And it began to break it down. I said, oh my gosh, are we there now?
Girl, I'm so glad you did it. I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm gonna let Cyrus talk for a little bit because we are co-hosts. I'm just gonna
Cyrus, let me just close one a piece. I was invited into a male group that meets once a month here in California. They meet virtually. They invited me based on what they saw in my books and said, can you come and talk to our group? We have couples night once a month. So they invite their wives in for one Friday out of the month. All the other Fridays they meet. And they had me to talk about the books, and that's one of the things I talk about. And it was something you said, Manuel. Now I'm trying to remember what you said. Something you said about coming out of the gate right away and all of that. Those men resonated with what I had to say so sincerely that I knew that what I was hearing from the readers was exactly what I needed to offer them. So it was my gift to the men who so many times are blamed for things that by a woman that they shouldn't be blamed for. It's the woman's responsibility for what she chooses to do and who she chooses to do it with. It's nobody else's.
True. Back in the studio, Cyrus.
I want to say thank you to those who are joining us for this episode of The Author's Den. Our guest is Dr. Velma Bagby. My co-host, of course, is Manswell Peterson. I want to go back to the comments, everybody, so I can kind of catch everyone up. Dr. Velma, let them know what people have been saying as you all have been talking. My friend Amy says, say it for those in the back, which is...
I know some of them, Amy.
So Amy also says, let's see, there was another comment from Amy here. And ask all the questions up front. If it's not there, run.
Yes, run.
Dr. Todd says, just here for the comments. Me too, Dr. Todd. I was just here for the comments. Let's see. Author G. Wilkins, hello to you. Hardcore Grind Magazine, hello to you. Good baby to see you as well. Make sure I got everyone Dr. Toss also says, right within your style. She was talking about what you mentioned earlier, Dr. Toss as well. So, Dr. Toss, I want to kind of go wide with you, something we haven't done in our previous conversations, but because the Author's Den is really about the writing journey overall.
Absolutely.
So you have been able to, for those who don't know, they know a lot of people were introduced to you. You and I were having this conversation, Dr. Velma, just a few days ago. A lot of people just have discovered you because of the Catch series.
Yeah.
But you've been writing, for some time in nonfiction. So I want to ask you about that, because there are some people out there who may have started off writing in one genre and wondered if they can go to another, how people would feel about it. Did you have any apprehension about being known for one thing and then trying something else?
No, not really. Because when I started out, it was pretty much writing about dating and relationships, how to discover the man that God has for you with my own adult daughter. So I'm thinking, okay, Christian nonfiction, that's pretty much the way I was trained. I'm an ordained minister, of course. And so we're trained to expound upon the word and the word only. So I'm writing this nonfiction thinking that's the way I'm supposed to go, because it's about our journey and what we experienced. But as I went along, I remember taking a pause because I got sick in 2019. And right after that, we had the pandemic. We had the George Floyd issue. All of that was happening at the same time. And I just felt compelled to write. And I always use Proverbs 3 and 6 for my guiding principle. Okay, God, what am I writing about this year? I acknowledge God means to invite in. So I invite him in. And he said, no, you write. I was instructed to write about my experience. What does it feel like to be in a place called down? Because as Christians, we assume we're never going to have problems. God is always going to protect us. Nothing's going to happen. We do go through those experiences, and they're all for a purpose. And so that's what I wrote about, a place called down. I just happened to be able to conclude that project just as the pandemic hit and just as the George Floyd issue hit. And I included both. I said, well, now, not only does an individual go to a place called down, groups of people go to a place called down with the George Floyd. And then here we have the entire world going to a place called down. What is that suffering and experience like? And so I included it in that book. So again, not sure of where I'm supposed to be in writing. I thought I was going back to writing about dating and relationships, following up on my very first book. But I paused to do that because that's what I felt compelled to do. And then started studying the contemporary Christian fiction and recognized that it's exactly like Jesus's parables. The whole idea of my Catch series was taking that approach, like the parables. He never wanted to preach people down. He never wanted to hit people over the head with a scripture. And so I wrestled with, am I going to fiction? That was when I turned towards Christian contemporary fiction, because Jesus' parables are fictional stories. He used it in a way that he didn't say, this is what you need to do. This is why you have the problem you're having. He wrote the story. He took something that was familiar with them, so that got their attention. He weaved the story in a way that the person can see themselves in it, not you telling them. And he also included a redemption plan or a way out or a way to change. And so I took that method, and that's how I approached the Catch series. Well, I thought it was going to be one novel, right, but it's now a series based on the interests of the readers.
Right. With you working on book number 4 right now, ESP Presents says that you better preach, Dr. Velma. She says Christians are humans. We have this facade of we don't fail, and that, let's see, and that we are not. And that we are not perfect. We must follow the Lord for the strength. And that's so true. And I think that's the whole thing. Ricardo, hello to you. Good to be able to see you. Wendy says we love it. And that's the whole thing. But I want to stay with that for a second, Dr. Bellman, because, you said it wasn't difficult for you. But for some people it is. Because I just interviewed Rashonda Tate, who's making a very big change in her writing journey. She's been writing what's been seen as being Christian fiction or inspirational fiction. Now she's writing historical fiction. She said that's where she wants to be now. Not all of her audience is following her to that. They don't want that from her. So for yourself then, I noticed when you started the Catch series, you started off with the fiction, but then you wrote the nonfiction book with it. But then you made a decision. And I remember the conversation you and I had about it, where you were talking to, I think, one of your coaches, and they said to you that really that book is totally separate. What is that like for you to know that you can stay in fiction and still be able to share the truth with people?
I love it. And the other thing that I discovered is someone suggested very early on that you should write a series. And I'm going, I'm not interested in writing a series. Let me just get this one novel out and get it out there. But the other thing that I wanted to say is we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are some books that I have out now that I'm going back to repurpose them in terms of rewriting the description and putting it in a different genre. We don't know what we don't know. I thought these genres that I used before were the right ones, and they weren't. Even the book I just mentioned to you that I wrote about a place called Down, Why Christians Suffer. That was what that book was about. And I wrestled with genre for that. And so again, as we learn, as we develop, as we get to know more about ourselves and what we're comfortable writing and talking about, then that's when those shifts happen. And this happened for me when I approached this novel. I knew when I discovered how fictional stories related to the parables, that set me free right there. Because a lot of people in the Christian community don't warm up to fiction.
Yeah.
They just don't. And so they prefer nonfiction. When I wasn't trying to teach a Bible study, I wanted my books to resonate to those who were familiar with scripture and those who weren't. Because the bottom line is we've been given a blueprint for dating and marriage that's over 2,000 years old. We forgot it was there. So many people don't know it exists. And so we have to determine how we're going to get the word out and get the message out. And this is how, oh, I'm sorry, my dog has heard somebody at the door.
Look, even the dog getting on the conversation, but that's what you know book do.
We welcome everyone here. It's okay.
It's okay.
That's what you
Brother Literacy says, Dr. Velma, we apply these types of stories, continue to teach the next generation about the institution of marriage and dating. And also, Dr. Todd says, we don't know what we don't know. That's so true. So as we wrap up here, Dr. Velma, I do want to ask you, then I'm going to turn it back over to Manswell. What advice would you give to aspiring authors out there in particular? Maybe they have not published their first book, but maybe they have an idea for a book. Based on what you've learned in your own writing journey, what advice would you give them when it comes to starting?
When I anticipated our conversation, I wrote down a few things that I thought was important, and that is, this is not a sprint. Don't get out of the gate with a book and ready to run. This is not that kind of thing. You have to crawl before you walk, just like a baby does. And so make sure you understand these pieces that I mentioned. What genre? Make sure you understand the requirements for that genre. It took me a long time to get comfortable showing and not telling. In the world of work, we tell. We're not showing you anything. This is what the rule says. This is what you got to do. But in terms of fiction, you have to show and not. It took me a while to flip that kind of mentality. And so you have to understand what you're writing. You have to understand the genre. And then it's important that you understand that this journey is not by yourself. Make sure you're surrounding yourself and connecting with people who are in that particular genre you're interested in, so that you can develop those relationships and friendships, so that you create for yourself a support network. Some people call it a tribe, but I had to learn from those who have already been there. And so they helped me along the way, and it's important. Relationships are important, because people are just, you can write a great book, but if nobody's interested in you or your book, then it's just a great book.
Yeah.
So it's important to establish those relationships as well. And then one thing I learned from my publicist, I think I had 50 people on my Instagram. You know, some people told me to start an Instagram. I think I had a few on Facebook. No, you need to go here too. And I didn't work towards trying to grow that audience at all, because I didn't know to do that. So those are all the tips and things you have to learn along the way. You can't do it by yourself. And that would be my greatest tip. It's just to understand.
Manswell, I'm going to come back to you, but I do want to get this question in for you, Dr. Velma. We had a question coming on the question bar. Author G. Wilkins, she wants to comment on what you mentioned about repurposing, Dr. Velma. She says, would you recommend changing a book's title based on reader suggestion? That's actually a really good question.
I had some readers that made some suggestions to me. I actually, when I had my first, what I call a brainstorming session with a seasoned author who's good at it, I still have those notes. And this series that I thought I was writing looked very different back then. I had a different title. I had a different cover. And I began to just really, my guiding principle, okay, God, I'm inviting you in. Is this the one? Is this what we should have? And I didn't feel comfortable with any of them. I wanted to make sure that the cover reflected what I felt should be reflected. Okay, we're talking about the wrong men to date. And my wonderful graphic designer came up with the silhouette. I said, I don't want a man. I didn't want any nationality because my family is mixed race. I couldn't have just one nationality on there. I wanted to apply to any nationality because that's what I'm talking about. So that's why you see a silhouette of a man. And because we're talking about catching and talking about fish, that's why the water, I mean, he did a beautiful job coming up with that silhouette.
It was.
In this next book, I wanted the silhouette of a woman. And I kept getting these different yeah, thank you, Cyrus. I kept getting different examples of what they thought it should be. And when I saw that particular sketch of that woman, it was a publishing company, friend of mine, Laquita Parks, who had that in one of the projects we were working on as an anthology. When they decided not to use it, I wrote to her. I said, can I have it? She gifted that to me. I sent it over to my graphic designer and they finished it up with that house and everything. So
love it.
Sometimes that's what you have to do. And when I started out, I used a publishing company because I did not know about any of this stuff. So I needed help.
Right.
Now I'm taking that book back and I'm going to be issuing it under my name. So those are things that you can do in response to her question. And my answer is yes. Genre, I helped my granddaughter write 3 of her books. And we had it in a specific genre at the time. Again, learning as you go. And I said, no, I need to change that genre. And sure, as soon as I changed it, her book hit #1. Now, her book has been out for some time, but it hit bestseller as soon as I changed the genre.
Love that.
Yep.
Love that. Dr. Velma, great conversation with you here. Manswell, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I love the fact that she said study. When you start crossing over genres, the biggest thing you have to do is study. And again, back of what she said, definitely covers, you can change covers. My advice would be, once you publish your book and you have a title, that title is part of that legacy for you. You can always change the cover. You can always change genres. But remember one thing, that title sticks with you. You don't want to have 2 different titles there because some people won't take down both titles and you'll confuse your readers more. So you got to be careful with changing titles. Leave the title, change the cover. They'll see the covers change and you won't run into no problem. That way people won't say you're trying to dupe them with 2 different books. Keep the title, change the cover, change the genre. That's perfectly fine. That's my tip for everybody.
Love that. Again, everyone, Dr. Velma Bagby has been our guest for this week's episode of The Author's Den. A great conversation, Dr. Velma. Dr. Velma, let them know how to stay connected with you.
I'm on all the social media platforms. Just look for Dr. Velma Bagby. It will either say Dr. Velma Bagby author or Dr. Velma Bagby. My Facebook profile, my professional page says Dr. Velma. So any of those will get you to me. Instagram, I'm on Threads, I'm on Facebook page. I'm on, all of them.
There you go.
That's
Wendy
the easiest way to
hello.
put it. And then you can also subscribe to my website at drvelmabagby.com.
Love that. Wendy says there's always a lesson in Christian fiction. Totally agree with that, Wendy. Good to be able to see you. Manswell, how can you stay connected with you, man?
Hey guys, you can always find me, Manswell T. Peterson, on all social media networks. I make it easy for you. Message me, I'll message you back, okay?
Well, until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb with Manswell T. Peterson saying thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you, guys.